Hi, I'm Carl Azus. A devastating fire at the world's most famous Gothic cathedral is our first story today on CNN 10. During the afternoon rush hour on Monday, fire trucks were fighting traffic in Paris, France, to get to Notre Dame. It's a Catholic church whose construction began in the 12th century. And as we produced this show, some of its features, like a spire that sat on top of the cathedral, had been lost. The Commander General of the Paris Fire Brigade said the first call to emergency services indicated that the fire had broken out in Notre Dame's attic. When we produced this show, officials didn't know what caused the blaze or if anyone was injured. There was scaffolding around the building as renovations were being done. Notre Dame is one of the most popular tourist attractions in a city that has a lot of them. An estimated 13 million people visit the cathedral each year. In addition to a landmark, it's also a functioning church, and the blaze occurred during the Christian Holy Week between the holidays of Palm Sunday and Easter. CNN's Melissa Bell was part of a crowd of people who witnessed the fire Monday evening.
Just extraordinary scenes here just outside Notre Dame. I've gotten close enough to see the amount of fire engines that are now close to the building, the efforts that have been being made to get this fire under control, but for the time being, that is not happening. Those flames are still really substantial behind those two main towers that mark that very famous front of Notre Dame. Huge amounts of smoke billowing out, flames still coming out through the very top of the roof. So that fire is raging for the time being and nowhere near being contained. Huge crowds have gathered, looking on in absolute astonishment and horror at what's happening here. We have no sense for the time being as to how this might have begun. Notre Dame, like so many other sites in Paris, is extremely heavily guarded these days, full of tourists at this time of year, in fact all year round, people who come to see its extraordinary and world-famous Gothic architecture. And it is one of those structures that really is as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside.
A French government official said exceptional efforts were being made to save what was left of the cathedral. Workers were reportedly able to get some of Notre Dame's famous artwork out of the burning building, but as far as the structure itself went, firefighters weren't sure last night what they could salvage. Tributes, memories, and prayers were being offered from all over Europe and America. 3 leaders in 3 days. That's what the African nation of Sudan has seen in the wake of a military coup that ousted its president, Omar al-Bashir. The leadership changes are part of a switch from Bashir's rule to that of a military council. The military is now in control of Sudan. Its plan is to run the country for at least 2 years until a changeover has been made to a civilian government. But many of the protesters whose demonstrations led to the coup want to see a civilian government now, and their leaders say they plan to keep the protests going until it does. Some other countries in the region are expressing support for Sudan. Saudi Arabia, for example, is sending humanitarian aid. A Sudanese military commander says some human rights groups will be invited back into Sudan, and that some political prisoners that were held during President Bashir's rule will now be released. Former President Bashir had been in power for 30 years. His political party says the coup was a violation of the Constitution and that the military's actions will delay the peaceful transition of power. But though the country's government has been officially listed as a presidential republic, many of those who lived under President Bashir say it was more like a dictatorship.
I was 11 years old when Omar al-Bashir came to power. I have known no other government in a real sense other than his government, and overnight our lives changed. But what I remember most is those first few hours and days and how empty those streets were and how everybody was watching and waiting to see what was coming next. And I think about that a lot. I've thought about that a lot because I think I never really believed that he would go. So many of the people that we've been speaking to hoped and prayed, but more importantly, believed that al-Bashir would go. And what's extraordinary is that most of those that were demonstrating against President Omar al-Bashir are his children. They are the generation that grew up under him. The majority of Sudan's population is under 30, and that is the majority of the people that were at that sit-in. And yet, in spite of the fact that they had known nothing other than him, nothing other than the apparatus and the infrastructure of his rule, and his oppression, that they had no real freedom of expression or freedom of the press or freedom of assembly. They still were able to dream it, and they were able to visualize it. And even now, many of those that we're speaking to on the ground say that they will not leave the sit-in sites until they are guaranteed a peaceful civilian transfer of rule, that what they want is democracy. In spite of never having experienced it, what they have fought for is something that they believe they deserve, and that is freedom. And that is what they are going to continue to fight for. They are very cognizant of what happened in Egypt after the ouster of Mubarak. They have seen what is possible in Algeria with the declaration of a civilian transition and of elections there. And that is what they want for themselves, and that's what they want for their country. And we hopefully will be watching and waiting as they continue to push for that.
In our ongoing Positive Athlete series, sometimes it's about an unfailingly good attitude. Sometimes it's about the way a student's helping a community. Sometimes it's how a competitor overcomes tragedy. And that's certainly what happened with Scott Tibbetts. After his older sister, a college student named Molly, was murdered last summer, Scott's team rallied around him, and he did his best to return their support.
I've always played quarterback in football ever since I can remember, and I've always said that if I didn't play quarterback, I'm not sure I'd play football, and it's just really because I like the position, I like being the leader on the field.
I'd say that, in that senior class that he was probably the main guy before any of this stuff happened with his sister that stepped up and took that leadership responsibility.
I feel like I had to be there for my team and my community after they had been there for me through all of that.
With the news that he got about them finding his sister, obviously he needed some time. When they get news like that on a Tuesday, that they're probably not going to be ready to play on Friday.
I missed 1 or 2 practices that week, and then I practiced the Thursday before, and then I told him I was going to play.
He talked with his family, and he just decided that he wanted to give it a try, and he ended up playing the game of his life, which was just awesome for everybody involved to see.
It had a different feeling because, a lot of people were wearing teal, a lot of people were, clearly there supporting us, and it was really special. I don't run the ball very often, and so when I was able to run one in and the whole team came around, it felt a little different than a normal touchdown celebration. We had the lead at that point, and everyone was pretty excited. I remember she always loved, after our games, if I had ever played well, she'd love to come home and tell me how great I played and just how much fun she had watching me. So I think she would love to see that.
I think it gave Scott something and his family, something to focus on that helped them get through that obviously really difficult situation.
I mean, it was really cool because it was quite a good turnout for the game. It was far away, but a lot of people showed up, and then my whole family was there, and it was cool just being able to, go hug everyone after the game, and it felt different than a normal after high school football game when you're just taking pictures. It felt a little more special.
I mean, I'm really proud of him for what he did and the way that he did it and the example that he set.
Just being able to focus on football for a few hours, it was good. I think it really helped to play.
If you're into fast cars at all, meet the man who has your dream job. Raffaele De Simone gets to test drive Ferraris for a living, or as he puts it, to confirm that Ferraris are alive. He's also an engineer, but come on, dude gets to drive Ferraris. On the track, in the hills around Maranello, Italy, De Simone says driving one of these is a unique experience and that they're not only cars. That might be because they cost more than houses. But who wouldn't emotor about having whatever formula it takes to steer a career that's so aerodynamic? You can burn off fuel, tread, and calories if you have the inside line on drifting circuits all fast and Ferrari is. Who wouldn't want to push to start a career like that? I'm Carl Olazus for CNN.